I can't decide if that's weird or awesome. After all these years, people are happy to know that we are finally getting an episode that not only expands on Celestia's character, but also expands on the relationship between the royal sisters. This was definitely a long time coming, and it's nice to know that I'll be looking over something with actual potential after going through something that was particularly terrible. So, is a royal problem an episode that lives up to the hype? Time to find out. Starlight Glimmer is called by the map to Canterlot to solve a friendship problem, and it turns out that the problem lies in the royal sisters with their lack of communication with each other. As the problem escalates, Starlight accidentally switches their cutie marks, giving the sisters an idea of being in each other's position. Unfortunately, it doesn't make the job any easier, as Starlight ends up having a dream that quickly spirals out of control. I love the way this story is paced. It takes its time establishing the episode's setup and each step taken to resolving the conflict. It's done slowly in a way that's easy to appreciate, so it doesn't cluster the plot or overwhelm the viewer, and it eases into each side of the issue, giving a proper understanding to both of the sisters and the reasons for their impatience. It's also a pretty nice spin on the map missions by having Starlight taking on a mission, which is an interesting idea. You'd think that Twilight would be more fitting for this type of situation, but the story lets us see how Starlight was the better decision. She's much calmer about the problem than Twilight, who constantly panics about it, and she has a history of not being biased due to how she doesn't really worship the princesses. Because of her calm and non-biased approach towards this conflict, she's able to push the royal sisters in a more logical direction, getting the chance to supervise and guide them through this new trial. Her interactions with them are done fairly interestingly, as it creates a new contrast of character reactions that fits the tone that the story is going for. Her everyman persona reflects off of Celestia and Luna pretty clearly, which helps to push the conflict forward as well as develop a relationship between the three. We even get to see some actual struggles that Starlight creates for herself instead of being brought upon by other characters. She appears anxious over the possibility that her decisions might be making the problem worse, thus becoming a burden to the sisters. The anxiety makes sense considering how important this friendship mission is and how high the stakes are in resolving it. It expresses how differently Starlight engages in these conflicts compared to Twilight, since she's more prone to her emotions and acts on instinct as opposed to Twilight, who would rather try to think about the situation, which is both a flaw and a unique method of dealing with the issue. The episode also does a great job of utilizing the sisters with previously established personality traits while also showing us some new sides to them. Celestia is more social and open-minded, while Luna is more secluded and private, and the two have become highly stressed with their jobs, which leads them to misunderstanding each other. The main conflict does appear to be an obvious one, with the typical not knowing what it's like to be in each other's shoes, so they switch places to learn to appreciate each other better. But it actually holds a good weight to it, considering exactly what their responsibilities are and how important they are. And it puts effective detail in showing how the two struggle in their new positions. Luna was always lacking in social experience and now must spend an entire day engaging in ordeals that require her to use those types of life skills. And when she screws up, the episode takes time to present the consequences of failing to accomplish her duties. Her nightmare sequence is really creepy in a fitting way that doesn't go over the top and manages to maintain a level of subtlety. The children chanting and Luna's teeth falling out gives you a really creepy shiver up your spine and a tolerable type of cringe that has an appropriate amount of screen time before it ends up going too far. Celestia is by far the biggest element of the episode, as we get a lot more personality from her, more so than any other episode in the series. She's sarcastic, bitter, smug, condescending, snarky, full of herself, and overwhelmed by her responsibilities. We saw in Celestial Advice that she's capable of feeling stress, and this episode expresses how she's able to keep that stress contained, putting on a facade in order to deal with her daily tasks. Of course, I also have to talk about her alternate persona, Daybreaker. I really like the way this character is designed. A fiery demon with solar flames for hair and a sadistic desire for power. It's also a fascinating dark reflection on what kind of power Celestia is capable of, how lethal it could be if she were to be corrupted. She's fairly knowledgeable about this, and the episode even implies her fears of the possibility that she could transform into that. The fight between Daybreaker and Nightmare Moon is visually entertaining, and it serves a purpose in the story as it actually breaks Celestia down into a state of vulnerability. It's only with Luna's help that she's able to calm herself down down and concentrate on solving the problem. This was a very much needed episode, exploring both the sisterly bond of Celestia and Luna and giving them more personality to work with, making the story much more interesting and engaging. Although I will admit it does raise a few questions, most notably how the Cutie map is sending Starlight on a mission at all. Before, it was thought that only the main 6 were able to use the map due to their connection to the elements of harmony and how they offered their power to the tree. Now we're basically being told that anyone can be called upon it to do something, which in turn makes it less interesting. The map was supposed to be something special, something unique to the main 6. But if the map can be assigned to anyone whenever the writers just feel like it, it takes away the sense of mystery surrounding it beforehand. There's some speculation that the map is possibly a living entity, but there's never been actual desire by the writers to explore that, making it more of a tool than a mystical artifact. I'd simply appreciate it if there was more background to how exactly this thing works. And why couldn't the photographer just take another picture of Luna at the school? Why did he even forward that to the newspaper? Was that just his trollish plan all along, to sabotage a school field trip? That just feels like a fabricated problem with an obvious solution. As for Twilight, she ends up being the weakest link of the episode. They're clearly playing up her paranoia and anxiety regarding Celestia, but it doesn't really do anything with it. It's certainly nothing new, and it doesn't help that she's potentially causing the stress being built up in Starlight's mind by constantly bringing up her errors. She tries to be a figure of advice, but she doesn't even help or say anything useful. She's just there for some obvious jokes regarding her fascination with her teacher, which doesn't serve a purpose in the story. Thankfully though, A Royal Problem has a lot of great elements that make it a real standout episode of Season 7. It has a well-paced story, very good characterization, offers new insight on Celestia and Luna, and somewhat creates more potential for Starlight in the future. It's an episode that I'll certainly be seeing again sometime soon. MisAnthro Pony, over and out.